He's really good at this.
Hello, it works. Hey guys, thanks for coming out. Loyal fans, we love it.
All right.
So when we do these ArcLight Presents, what we really like to do is talk about the making of the film, how it was made, the reason it was made, any of the direction that they can give us. And since we happen to have the two producers, two of the major producers on the project, the first thing I'd like to ask is, this is your third film that you guys did together.
Actually, it was the first one after we became partners, but I don't know if it was the first one that came out. But no, I mean, I got involved. Just hold it.
Hello, you just talk into it, Jim.
All right. I don't do this very often. So, what happened was, when I was still head of acquisitions for Universal, a critic friend of mine was interviewing, called me because he just talked to Rick Linklater about what he was going to do. This was Rick had directed Slackers, and he was on the U.S. tour. And my critic friends called me and said, you know, he wants to do an American Graffiti for the 70s. And I went, well, that's a good idea. So I called my friends at Sony Classics who were representing Slackers and said, okay, how do I get hold of Rick? And they put me in touch with him, and I said, why don't you fly to L.A. And Sean, who had a good producer's deal over there, and was one of my producers I was representing at the time, I asked him if he would be interested in the movie, and he said absolutely. So we met with Rick and worked out a deal, and he started working on the script, and in the interim, Sean and I became partners in Alphaville, so it was really the first movie, and that's when Alphaville was formed, and that was the first movie that Alphaville actually went out and produced. So I still remember that, showing up in all these, we had a little hotel down on the river that all these kids were staying in, and John Cameron, who was the first AD, said, we have enough money that you can stay in the Four Seasons if you want. Well, they all stay at this crummy hotel down in the valley, down on the river where the bats came out every day. And I said, well, I probably should stay in the same hotel as everybody else. That was a mistake.
Lead the fifth.
I never drank so much in all my life. So it was partially because we were
working on our characters.
Yeah. Every time I came home for dailies, they were sitting in the big group of them would be sitting in the lobby and go, how were dailies? But they were very young, and a lot of them was their very first movie. And I remember, Rory Cochran always asked me, how was I? For a while, I'd say, you were really funny, and he was going to be our Spicoli character, when, Sean had been involved and passed on to Ridgemont High at Universal, so it was always kind of one of the movies that, that and American Graffiti that we used as the model. And he was going to be our Spicoli character, so I said, no, you're really funny. And it was, so I did that for 3 or 4 days in a row. And then for a while, I just kind of would walk by everybody and go to my room because I was just getting awfully tired of it all. And, after about a week, Rick comes up to the director and says, what did you say to Rory? And I go, what do you mean, what did I say to Rory? He says, he's all freaked out. He thinks you hate his performance. And I go, I told him it was great, And then we finally figured out that I said it was great the first 3 or 4 days, and then I stopped, pumping him up.
Also, he was sort of one of those New York angsty kind of actors who, as brilliant as he was, he still wanted to convince himself that he wasn't, so he tortured himself on a daily basis. Well, the rest of us just watched him and thought he was brilliant.
Yeah.
He really had this insecurity about whether he was performing or not.
So I realized,
just shut up.
I realized you either have to never talk to them about dailies or talk to them every day.
I've learned to not even watch them. I don't even watch anymore. And I don't even ask.
Well, why don't we talk about that time in the hotel? You guys were young actors. You were both with a bunch of young actors
What
as
I
well.
can remember. No, it was really incredible because people sort of did kind of peel off in groups, the sort of groups that ended up in the movie. And I really did feel always an obligation and an attachment to everybody in general. So I could sort of really morph into the kind of different groups going on, and it really kind of fit into what was going on in the movie. But there really was sort of a set kind of group of guys that hung out together, and the people that sort of bonded in the film really sort of outside had their external bonds as well. And then we would have the weekends where we would all get a boat and go down the river, or we would go get inner tubes and, you know, a beer tube and hang out and all go down the river and hang out, and everybody bond together, you know. So it really was an amazing time.
I never got invited on the boat.
I'm sorry. Really?
I never got invited to the boat.
That's,
What was the experience like for you, Michelle?
It was, well, I mean,
You know, it was the first time I ever saw a movie camera. I was one of those first-time actors. Jason.
How hot was she and how great was she?
I can say how hot and how great he was, because he took me by the hand and I said, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and what are all these people doing here? And all these chords and all this stuff, and he goes, come here, and he gave me so many pep talks, and you were like, you were my rock through that whole thing, you know, I mean, I was terrified, and you really helped me through it. So,
A lot of the actors on the set had worked together on school ties right before the movie, so they were already friends. Like, you know,
Cole Hauser,
Cole,
Ben.
Ben,
Yeah.
yeah.
I almost got that part of that movie, but I auditioned and I thought I had it, and I didn't. Oh well.
We had, before everyone got to Austin on location, we actually had quite a struggle getting the movie made.
well, the movie only got made because Sean had a deal that he could put a $5 million movie. And for you guys that
God
don't know
bless you,
what it
Sean.
means is that he could say, we're making it, and the studio has to make it.
And they didn't want to.
And they didn't want to. And they finally didn't let us put it. They just said, okay, we're making it. And, you know, we're accepting the movie. But they knew that we were prepared to put the movie if we had to.
Why did they decide to accept it rather than
Well,
do that deal?
they just didn't want it as a precedent that somebody put a movie to them like that. But, you know, we also had, Paramount was really pursuing the movie. And we kept saying, you know, we had an exclusive deal, but we said, but we have an exclusive deal because we have the ability to put the movie. So we're either you accept the put, or let us take the movie to Paramount. I mean, you don't have to make it if you don't want to, because we have another studio that wants to make it.
It was a uphill fight to get the studio to finally decide to make the movie.
And Rick not being very savvy about much of anything except for how to, you know, actually shoot a movie, you know, but didn't know anything about business or anything like that. Wasn't really all that helpful in meetings. And right up.
Hey, I have to, I don't want to interrupt too much, but I went through the entire audition process. I had the part after many hours and many times of auditioning without even knowing that Linklater was in the room. So, like you just said, he was just that, he was kind of there.
Yeah. But no, I mean, look, it was his movie.
It was Rick's vision
Yeah, like
and
it's-
Rick's script, and it was the right, we knew we were fighting for something that was going to be really good. I can't say that the studio ever totally came around.
No, and you know, and he was, like I said, he was difficult all the way through the process, which is why the movie ended up at Gramercy, which was a kind of an offshoot of Universal at the time. It should have been released as a Universal picture with a wide national release, and didn't really get very well. The release of the movie was not very good. It was
a fight all the way through, and it never got a full national release.
No, it didn't. We opened up, I think the original release was something like 300 or 400 screens, of which half of them were in Florida, which was weird because the movie demographic in Florida is a lot older than most of the country. And, but...
Now, how cool is that it kind of turned out to be
Well,
such a
it
great-
actually really caught on
Yeah.
in video, and that's where it really
And in
became-
college.
Well, Jason, let me ask this question. Michelle, you guys were sitting there and you had said that you auditioned many times. You didn't realize that he was even in the room. What was the difference in the process when you were actually shooting? Was he any different on the
Oh,
film?
no, absolutely. I mean, basically, what he was doing was brilliant. He sat back until it was ready for him to do what he knew he was great at. And, you know, he let Don Phillips, really our casting director, who also was the casting director on Fast Times and one of the producers, and just one of these guys that really knows how to just orchestrate a group of people that work well together. And so when we would go in, Don Phillips is a very dominant sort of character. So you only have no choice. You just have a choice of paying attention to him. And there was always this sort of bob-haired guy in the back who I kind of thought was his assistant, was very quiet. And we went through the entire audition process, which was a crazy process. It was kind of a cattle callback of a big giant group of people, and we spent an entire day at Sony auditioning time and time again, picking partners, doing this and that and that and that, and people were getting sent home. And basically after a very long day of pizza party and Coca-Colas and meeting people and hanging out, at the end of the day, and making out with a lot of different people. Exactly, yeah, we had to make out with pretty much everyone actually there.
That's what they did.
And so that was our payment for the day. And then at the end of the day, without having any idea that they weren't still making cuts, we had no idea that they weren't going through another session, another roll of it. Finally, the bob-haired little young guy in the back comes up and says, "Hey guys, I'm Richard Linklater, and you guys are my cast." And so that was really, for me, one of the most memorable moments, you know, of the entire thing, was just enjoying that day. I think the day was so wonderful that I probably could have gone home. I probably would have been bummed, but I definitely would have been bummed once the movie became so big. But at the time, we had no idea that it was going to be that. So when we were making the movie, we were just there having a great time. We had no idea that anyone really truly cared.
Well, during that casting process, usually the casting director and the director are giving you instruction, especially because this is a semi-autobiographical film. He didn't give you any instruction as to this is how I want.
Yeah, he would, but it was really, he had talked to Don so much about it that Don really would just sort of kind of come out and do it.
One of the things that was, I think, very unique to the audition process is they had us take the script and learn every line. Every girl learned every line for Jody, and every guy was to learn every line for Pink. So we all auditioned for the same role. And then they kind of, in a process of getting to know us and getting to know our personalities, you know I really wanted Mila's role, because I had never done anything before. I thought, gosh, this particular role, she doesn't speak through the whole film. That one I can get. So that's what I was vying for. I wanted that role, and I ended up getting Jody. I was so shocked, and I'll never forget running through the hallways looking for a payphone so I could call my mom and tell my mom, I got it. But that audition process was so unique because generally, you know, you go in and you read through the role that you're auditioning for, and that was not the case, you know. And it was really fun. It took a lot of pressure off, and we all just had a really good time. And
Well, actually, what was really going on was during the whole thing was that we were matching people up, and then after a short period of time, we would go off and do another room. It'd be Sean, myself, Don Phillips, and Rick. And then we'd say, okay, we'd start talking about the different people and for the different parts, and we'd say, okay, we like this person, and then it really came down to a couple of parts that, by the end of the day, it was really a couple of parts that we weren't quite sure about, and there were a couple of things, a couple of people that we didn't cast in LA, like the Wooderson character, which became Matthew, which was a famous story there, was Don Phillips, who was getting drunk at the Four Seasons bar, and there was this, there was this kid right near him, and they got talking, and says, "What are you doing in town?" Don Phillips says, "I'm a casting director on a movie that's shooting here." And Matthew said, "Oh, I'm an actor." And he said, "Really? Like that?" And he said, "Well, you should come in." And, he got the part the next day. I mean, he really was, that character.
And Wiley, I believe Wiley was walking down the street, right?
Yeah, Wiley was another local, and a lot of the freshmen were locals.
Yeah.
And Wiley, we actually all thought that Wiley might really turn into something. He was a really good actor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And but he ended up being a computer genius at University of Texas, and that's what he does now.
Yeah, I actually have a funny story. I actually got Final Cut Pro for my computer system, and I couldn't get it into. In fact, I called my buddy right here to help, and he couldn't help me with this one thing. And so I finally called Apple, and they go, "We're going to give you our technician, our Final Cut Pro." Wiley. So they clicked me over to it, and he goes, "Hey, my name's Wiley. Can I help you with your problem, mate? I'm having this issue of downloading the thing." And he goes, "Is this Jason London?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Jason from Dazed." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "It's Wiley." I thought your voice sounded familiar. What the hell? Like he's my Apple technician. Awesome. And he's happy doing it. That's what he loves. And I guess he helped Rick a lot with some of the sort of cartoon effects on some of the other movies
Yeah,
that he did.
and Rick mentioned that.
Yeah, so I guess, and he was really happy with doing that, sort of developing some of that technology and all that. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, the casting was a very lengthy, involved process.
Actually, it was very interesting. I'd never gone through anything. Well, I'd done some movies by that time, and I'd never gone through anything quite like that before. But it was,
Neither have we.
And I have to say, we did the same thing on Mallrats, and it wasn't as successful. I mean, it worked out okay, but still, it wasn't. We were.
I was busy.
We ended up getting his twin brother.
So you guys were producers on this, where you clearly were on-set producers. Were you also an on-set producer at the time? Were you down there?
Jim spent most of the time on location. I came in and out often.
Answering cell phones.
Actually,
I'm teasing him about it.
Cole Hauser, every time he still says it. Every time I see him, he says, every time I see you, I can only see you walking around with 2 beers, one in each hand.
That was his fault.
I was going like, yeah. It was a lot of fun.
It was the greatest. It was I've had so much fun on so many movies, but nothing comes close to the experience.
You don't know when you're making a movie what it's going to turn into. You don't know what's going to go on to become, in this case, really deservedly a classic.
Yeah.
You just think you're making a really good movie.
And we were having
everyone
so much
poured their
fun
hearts
being
in
there.
it.
Yeah, we were having so much fun being there and doing it. And Rick gave us at the beginning of the process, right when we first started the rehearsals, he gave us all tapes with music on it and said, "Do not turn on your radio. You don't turn on your TV. Listen to this music the entire time you're here." And that's what we did. We hung out as a group and we listened to that music, which was the music in the soundtrack, and we just sort of just felt it. Being in Austin really helped. I mean, that's something about that place is cool, but it helped.
I don't know about you, but it absolutely was my high school. That was my high school experience, 100%, even though I didn't grow up in the 70s. I mean, I grew up in a really small town in Ohio where it was, the very first party I went to, they were playing Led Zeppelin on, lawn with these big, huge speakers, and, I was a freshman, my sister was a senior, and it felt like my life when I read that script. And so,
and of course,
very
you got
personal.
Rick's sister there, who was
Exactly.
who was the character.
Yes. Yeah.
I'd gone through it to talk to. So,
Yeah.
it was Rick's high school years with a little bit of mine, and touched in because as we were working through the script, I was going to start telling him stuff from my high school years, which were about 10 years before that is.
Right, but what was great was that everybody can see that, I think, looks at the movie and sees themselves, sees their brothers, their sisters, their own high school, and
Still to
sees
this
their own
day,
experience.
Today's generation of high school.
I've got a 15-year-old daughter. She thinks I'm the coolest guy ever. It's great. I love it. It's the kids at her school love it, and her teachers love it. And it's really, they all, because the teachers are at the right age where they would have watched the movie and enjoyed it as well. And the students are just discovering the movie, and it's so interesting to go and get so much love from these people, just how much they enjoy the movie. And my daughter is obviously very happy to be in Texas and get cool points for it.
I think
everyone loves it. Everyone does.
Yeah, I think what we love about it is that when you're watching the actual film, I hate to use the word organic because everybody uses that word, but the scenes flow so organically. They really move, and the way he shot it, and I don't know if he had a shot list when he did it, and I don't know how many takes he did, but I'd
Rick
love to
wouldn't know
know.
what a shot.
That's exactly
Right, so
right.
that's-
I'll tell you what, the organic part of what you're talking about
you're,
is such a
you're
huge part.
actually getting into my one great quiver.
Poor guy. This poor guy heart attacks every
They
day.
were there, and
Yeah.
I would get so pissed at him.
He's a shoot from the hip, like,
Oh,
just,
well,
I had an
you know,
idea.
We'd get to lunch and he didn't have a shot because he was rehearsing all, the whole
Yeah.
morning, and I go,
It would be like, here's the
How
location,
The
yeah.
first AD's coming to me, who's a really, he was first AD for the Coen Brothers. I mean, he really knows his stuff, and he's coming to me and says, I don't think we're gonna get our day, And I kept telling him, Rick, we forced the studio into this movie. We only have this much money. Like they're not gonna give us any more. Because he kept saying, oh, when they see the dailies, they'll be glad to give us more money. And I go, you don't have a real conception of what these people are like, do you?
No, they were not, back at the studio, they were not sympathetic.
No, and they basically said, look, make the day, or start cutting pages.
Did you, how did you make the days then? And did you
Well,
know?
I'd be screaming and yelling at him at lunch, saying, you got to make your day, and I said, you're not going to have a lot of coverage. I mean, and to be fair, I mean, American Graffiti doesn't have any coverage.
Right, and I think that's,
it's
the
all
real time
masters.
plays well.
If you notice, the movie's mostly masters.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
the
what.
cutting is from one location to another group, you're cutting in between groups.
But
Group,
that's
yeah,
what-
I just think that's what makes the movie. I mean,
That's what makes the
personally
movie,
think
yeah.
that it was one of those sort of serendipitous things
But-
that just,
But
It
it was,
ended up
but
with-
I wish I could say that that was his plan, but it wasn't.
Right.
It kind of came because we weren't making the days. And a lot of it had to do because the crew was half the guys from Austin that he made Slackers with, which you remember he made from his credit cards, and he'd shoot a few days and then he'd wrap everybody and then he'd go off and make some money and then he'd come back and shoot a few more days until he finally had enough to cut a movie together. Well, this time it had to be, half the crew was like those kids, and the other half were people that we brought in from LA. And the LA people were going like, this is crazy how we're making this movie. But, but everybody was excited and everybody liked what we were getting on film. It was just that it was a real struggle.
Well, there was a very small budget, very short production schedule, and a lot to film.
Yeah. And he had, it was a hefty script, and there was a lot of improvisation going on.
Yeah.
And some of the actors got it. That the idea about improvisation is you keep improvising, and then you find what you want, and then you do it. But then you had others that would never quite find what they'd want. I mean, Sean, for instance, he just was different.
You said it, I didn't.
He was different every take. So it doesn't, we had to pull him aside after 10 days of shooting. He said, "This isn't cutting. You're going to get cut out of the movie because your stuff's not going to cut together." And for years I used to apologize to Mila when I'd see her around town. This is like, you were great, but but your scenes were all with Sean, who was different every take.
He thought he was like Marlon Brando. He just sort of wanted to be like the crazy guy.
He was good in in a lot of the stuff. It was just that he had no discipline to it. And he said, well, this is how Nicholson does it. And I go, well, but Nicholson does it. First of all, Nicholson's been doing it long enough to know that once he knows what's good. When he finally improvises something that's good, then he does it over and over and over.
Sean Andrews would do stuff like say, "You want to go with me to the airport and watch people?"
Somebody who just couldn't get out of his own way.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this
Yeah.
question. So you guys have shot this. You guys have shot The Mummy. You guys have shot huge, huge films. Which do you like better? When you think about it and you sit back and you're like, okay, my experience on the bigger films was this. My experience on this was, what do you like?
Well, I think we like all the movies that we do.
We're really proud of them, and they're different sizes, and each one is a struggle.
But I have to say, when I really think about what I had fun doing, it was like Raising Arizona, Dazed and Confused, The Gift, things like that. Tombstone, which was a little bit bigger, but the Mummy movies are
that
more
movie.
like the Mummy movies are these. That's like actually, my father was a career military officer. I tell him this is like me doing what you used to do. It's like running an army, and because it's huge.
But the struggle to make a movie is every bit as difficult with the small size, in fact, possibly even harder.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the biggest thing too is after the movie's wrapped, to get the studios to take it seriously, because they don't have that much money invested. So if there's any problem at all in the first research screening, I mean, the fact is, you know, the head of our studio brought his wife to the second screening of Dazed and Confused, and their oldest daughter was just about to go off to college, and she was horrified by the movie, you know, absolutely horrified, and you know, and he
It
told
was
us,
not a good moment in the history of the film.
you know, and he kind of told us, my wife hates this, you know, and I went like, great, you know, I said, why the fuck is she at the screening? You know, I said, you know, but you know, it's like it's the kind of thing that we deal with, you know.
So that became a huge obstacle that we then had to overcome.
Yeah. You know, and she was like, well, they didn't, you know, like she didn't like the pot smoking and the swearing and everything.
They smoke pot in the film?
Yeah, you know, and
That's
I
not
said,
legal.
well, you know, what would you rather that, you know, these girls were all having, you know, unprotected sex? You know, I mean, would that be better? You know, like, but
You said that to
oh
her?
yeah, no, Paul. No, I wouldn't talk to his wife.
Oh, that explains it.
So as actors, having this experience and then having experiences on television and on other movies, what have you preferred?
From features to television?
No, I mean from features that have that more specific direction versus this that obviously was much more freeform.
I tell you, I loved it. I loved it. For us, you know, at the time we didn't understand what it was going to become. We understood where it stood in the line with the studio and the possibilities of it either sort of becoming their baby or not. We were getting paid not a ton of money. We were there because we absolutely loved the script and then fell in love with the other people we were working with. So if we could have continued that as a series and all got paid $100 a day for the rest of our life, I think we probably would have done it. I mean, it was just a great experience.
You know, like 7 or 8 years after we made the movie, you know, Rick, we were trying to talk Rick into doing a follow-up, another, you know, like these kids in the 80s, the same people. And, you know, by this time, Matthew and Ben and a lot of these people Renee Zellweger is in the movie. A lot of people don't know that. She's one of the girls, the senior girls. You know, that's right.
All the Dazed fans know this.
Yeah.
Right?
But anyway, she, but you know, we asked around. I had to see these people around, you know, town, and I remember one time I had an art discussion with Cole Hauser, and I said, well, I think the way we try to do it is shoot it, you know, in 6 weeks, where everybody worked. Half the people worked the first 3 weeks, half the people worked the last 3 weeks, and then everybody worked the middle week. And Cole said, well, what if I want to stay longer? And, you know, like, and he said, I think everybody's going to want to stay all 7 weeks, you know. And I went, really? You know, like that. And everybody basically signed on. I mean,
I remember him talking about ideas for it, you know, when we were shooting it.
We had a thing, but we never did it. I mean, actually, he has finally written a follow-up, but now we have to do it with different actors.
I'll be really old. Just imagine how cool the haircuts will be. Anybody have a question? Anybody would like to ask a question?
Is it ever going to come out on Blu-ray?
Isn't it? You know, I mean, I know there's a Criterion version.
There's a great Criterion version.
But no Blu-ray. You know what, I didn't know that. I'm sure sooner or later we'll be, yeah.
I think back there was one first.
No, that was my question.
Oh, okay.
Stretches.
Were you like that in high school, kind of like being like the popular cool guy who stood up to the little man?
I was that without being the super popular cool guy. I would stand up for the little guy, no problem, but no, I was like the...
He never had the opportunity to do it, but had he had the
I was like
opportunity.
the drama guy, yeah. No, I grew up in Texas, where you have to be about 7'4" and have 400 pounds to play sports, and at one point I stopped growing and they kept growing, and those were the cool guys, and so for me, I found something that I really enjoyed in acting and in drama. In Texas, not so cool. So I didn't get beaten up because I would beat their ass if they tried. No, I made great friends with everybody. You know, that's kind of my thing. So one of the big parts of the character for me that was very easy, and a big part of my life is who I am as a human being is I love everybody. I love making friends with everybody. So I've never really had that sort of thing of not liking somebody for whatever their class system is or their color or I've never had that. So for me, I was able to associate sort of to his being able to fall right in and be a part of whatever group you're a part of. I did that, my whole life.
Any other questions?
Well, Mr. Jackson, you worked with a lot of directors on your second film, Rick here, and Kevin Smith and all that. Challenging, I suppose. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Joel Nathan, with everything's on. What challenges did you face working with them, being so young and raw, and then see them get success further on? Do you take pride in that? And who was the easiest to work with, and who was
The absolute easiest were the Coens. I mean, they're professional, they're smart, they storyboard every shot of the movie. I mean, you basically, and they're just really, really nice people. They get along with everybody. And their crew is very, very loyal to them. So it was like a big family. And it was very fun for me because I became, I was kind of the father figure for the family. And, but yet, they knew a lot more about making, that was my first movie. I often say, it was funny, the first time I ever walked onto a movie set, I was the boss. But I was the boss of the Coens, so I didn't really have to do much, I just sat there, but like they say, well, what do you think? I said, great guys. I'm like, what are we gonna do tomorrow? Rick and I clashed a lot, but the movie turned out well.
The post-production was on Dazed, was a series of battles that were creative and that ended up with the movie you saw.
I mean, Rick wasn't easy to work with. I mean, today we now are good friends. I mean, there was a moment, during the movie we almost got into a fist fight.
I told Jim, no, I actually had to say to Jim, no, you cannot hit him.
Hey, look, at least I don't think we were aware of that, so that's very wonderful and professional of you.
We went over to the side and he started, he said, look, you can't be telling me what to do. I said, look, you got to make your days. But we've talked about it, a lot over the years, and we've become, we've gotten past it all. In fact, we make jokes about it, now. And we also, and for a long time, Dazed and Confused was his best movie and his most successful movie. So there was that too, that the interaction between the two of us worked out. For instance, I had a great relationship working with Kevin Smith. I love Kevin Smith. He's like my little brother. And but the movie didn't work as well as his other movies, so we never really talked about making another movie together. As far as Sam Raimi, I've made more movies with Sam Raimi than anybody else, and he's like Joel. I met Sam because he and Joel Coen were best friends. Not many people know this, but Joel Coen was actually the assistant editor on Evil Dead. And that's how, and when he was got to be friends with Sam doing that, Sam told him how he raised the money to make Evil Dead, and then he took, he and Ethan wrote this script, Blood Simple, together, and they went off and did the same thing. They went to doctors and dentists in Minneapolis and raised $800,000 to make the movie. And that's how he did it. So when Sam, when I became really close with Joel and Ethan, Sam says, actually called Joel, says, can I borrow him? Maybe he can help me make my movies. So when Sam came out to Hollywood, I didn't produce it, but I might as well have. He was involved very heavily in Darkman, which Sean, greenlit as the editor.
I was studio president, Jim was senior executive, and we made the movie, we financed the movie.
Yeah, and we got Darkman made, and that was the movie that kind of launched Sam's Hollywood career. And I love Sam. Still do. When we were making The Gift, I sent him off to the Spider-Man interview, saying, okay, this is what you should say in it, and we talked a lot about Spider-Man and stuff like that. And he said, don't worry, Jim. He says, I'll go make Spider-Man, then I'll come back and make movies with you. I said, well, that was 10 years ago, And, he's, life, moves on. He made 3 Spider-Man movies, and then I moved on and he moved on. But I would work with Sam I would work with Sam in his second. In fact, I talked to Joel and Ethan not too long ago and said, before I'm done, I want to make one more movie with you. And they said, well, we're not close to being done.
I don't think they're done.
I said, well, maybe.
Yeah, I think they're doing okay right now.
Yes, I said, I might be done, so and they said,
I don't think so.
And they said, you come to New
I don't
York,
think so.
you come to New York and we'll talk about it, so I'll make another movie with them, I'm pretty sure.
Well, we usually like to ask, one of the last questions is, what was your best time, what was your worst time? Clearly, I believe your worst time, Jim, was you almost got into a fist fight. What was your best time on the movie?
Oh, I
Same
had,
thing with Sean, Jason, Sean?
best time was, I just every night was fun. I mean, look, fighting with directors is part of what you do. I mean, you're
It's
struggling
not
against
out of the
people.
ordinary, it's not, you're not.
Now, actually punching him out is a little different, but I used to argue, we actually said this in an interview, the 2 of us, together. I said, well, it was like 2 ex-college jocks kind of snarling at each other. And I said, but he was a baseball player and I was a wrestler, so I would have kicked his ass. Which he said, which he was, obviously contesting. But we would have, working on movies is, you have an obligation as a producer to deliver the movie that you promised.
And to wrestle with whoever you need to fight with, so that what comes out finally from the editing and what gets shown up there is the very best movie.
Yeah, it's always called the working compromise. That's what every film is, it's a working compromise.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But anyway, but working with the young actors was probably a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun at that hotel. I didn't go out with them at night. The problem is they would check the call sheets every night, like who was working the next day, and whoever wasn't headed off to what night.
Yeah, well, that was the great part about having such a big cast, is that there were a lot of times when you didn't work, and that was party night.
Yeah. And Austin was a good town to party.
It was, yeah. Austin was a...
Austin is a great
Went out
location.
in those groups, I know.
She didn't,
I
not
take
too
you
often.
out occasionally.
But not on the boat, right?
Yeah, not too often.
Yeah, I did.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out,
Thank you guys
and
so much.
we appreciate you being here.